সাবজেক্টকে আমাকে ছাড়তে হবে।
যদি বিছানার উপর একটু নিয়ে যেতে পারতেন ল্যাপটপটা, তাহলে মনে হয় একটু বেটার দেখতাম।
দুটো বই দিলে এবারে।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, একটু ল্যাপটপের লিডটা একটুখানি নিচের দিকে করে দিন স্যার। আর একটু করে দিন। হ্যাঁ স্যার, ঠিক আছে ঠিক আছে।
ঠিক আছে,
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
ওকে।
ঠিক আছে স্যার, কোনো ব্যাপার নেই। আচ্ছা,
So today we will discuss about the examination of the precordium, right? Hello, am I audible?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Okay. So at first, the cardiovascular examination I will discuss first and will demonstrate first, and then we will go to theoretical discussion because I have to leave the subject first. ঠিক আছে, আর ডেটারও ব্যাপার আছে, যত তাড়াতাড়ি এক্সামিনেশনটা দেখিয়ে দেওয়া যায় তারপরে আমরা থিওরিটিক্যাল ডিসকাশনে যাব। ঠিক আছে?
Okay sir.
So first, when we examine the cardiovascular examination, first we have to expose the part of the chest. ঠিক আছে? Next, what we will do by inspection, we will see if there is any bulging over the precordium or not. Is there any scarma or not? Any accessory nipple or not? Like that. Okay, any venous prominence is there or not? Like that. And most importantly, whether there is any visible pulsation. What are the areas we look for visible pulsation in cardiovascular examination? We look for cardiovascular examination, the pulsations are looked in from the suprasternal area. By suprasternal area, we look for any suprasternal pulsation. There is any suprasternal pulsation or not. Then left second intercostal space, that is the pulmonary area. Is there any visible pulsation or not? In that way, in aortic area, that is right second intercostal space. In neo-aortic area, left third intercostal space. In tricuspid area, left fourth intercostal space. And in the apex, which is usually in the left supraclavicular line and which is half inch medial to the left fifth intercostal space, half inch medial to the midclavicular line. In those areas, we look for any visible pulsations or not. Okay, now inspection, and in inspection we look for these criteria. And during palpation, the palpation is a very important part in cardiovascular examination, and we look areas by areas, palpate areas by areas. What are the areas normally we palpate? The normal areas we palpate are the mitral area, tricuspid area, aortic area, pulmonary area, and neo-aortic area. The mitral area is in the midclavicular line, left midclavicular line, half inch medial to the midclavicular line, and it is the area of the apex, normal apex also. And how we palpate? We palpate by the palp of the finger, like this. Next, in the left fourth intercostal space, just lateral to the sternum. Before that, you have to ascertain which space you are palpating. From the suprasternal notch, you come to the angle of Lewis, and from there you count the second space, third space, fourth space, and fifth space. In left fourth intercostal space, just lateral to the sternum, this is the tricuspid area, and you palpate with your palp of the finger. Next, go to pulmonary area and then aortic area. And by this method of palpation, we can localize the apex first in the mitral area, where is the position of the apex. If the apex is not palpated in the usual area, then you have to go to outward or inward direction if there is any shifting of the apex beat or not. If in that position also the apex is not palpable, then what will you do? You will make the patient sit and then palpate the apex. If in that position also the apex is not palpable, then we should go to the right side. If there is any dextrocardia, then the apex beat will be palpated in the right side. Okay, but never turn the patient to the left or right position, left or right lateral position to localize the apex, because when you when the patient is lateralized, then the heart is also rotated and the apex is also rotated to that side. So if in those position, in normal supine position, sitting position and right lateral position, the apex could not be localized, then you say that there is I could not localize the apex. What are the possibilities for those? The physiological possibilities are the patients may be very obese, number one. Number two is the apex is behind a rib. These are the two physiological conditions where we cannot localize the apex properly. And the other pathological causes are the left-sided pleural or cardiac pathology. Left-sided pleural pathology like pneumothorax or pleural effusion or pneumothorax, or cardiac causes, it may be a case of cardiac tamponade where we cannot localize the apex properly. Now, what are the character of the apex? Apex is the outermost and downernmost a definite thrust that is felt in your palm of the finger. It must not be the maximum thrust you feel over the precordium. It is the downernmost and outermost definite thrust that we feel. That is the localization of the apex. And the character, it is normal character, where we feel a brief pulsation of the apex over the palm of the finger. This is normal apex. And other types of apex character are hyperdynamic, which is forceful and ill-sustained. Means it will tap your finger, just tap your finger and then goes away. Those are found in very short, where there is very short systole, like aortic regurgitation, mitral regurgitation, etc. Another type of apex is, the first type of apex is normal, second type of apex is hyperdynamic, third type of apex is heaving type of apex, where the apex is hyperdynamic and well sustained. Ill sustained means the timing of the apex is less than 1/3 of the duration of the systole, and when the apex is felt greater than 1/3 of the time of the systole, it is called well sustained apex beat. It is also called heaving type of apex, and heaving type of apex is seen in when there is left ventricular outflow tract obstruction, like aortic stenosis, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, coarctation of aorta, very severe systemic hypertension, like that. Okay. Another type of apex is tapping apex. Tapping apex is which is seen in mitral stenosis, that is palpable fast heart sound that will feel on your palm and goes away. And another type of apex is hypodynamic apex, means it is not forceful, very feeble apex, and it is seen in peripheral circulatory failure. So when we palpate, we can in the apex, we can feel the localization of the apex beat and character of the apex beat. Also, we will try to feel if there is any palpable heart sound like S1, S2, S3 or S4. Okay. Now we go to the other areas also, like tricuspid area in left fourth intercostal space, in pulmonary area left second intercostal space just lateral to the sternum, and right second intercostal space in the aortic area. And during palpation, we see normally the besides the apex, in other areas also we feel the heart sound, whether it is S1, S2, S3 or S4, and mainly thrill is present or not, any palpable thrill. Thrill is the palpable murmur, like purring of a cat. And how do we palpate the thrill? Thrill is palpated by this wave of the fingers, like this. When we were palpating for any pulsation and any palpable heart sound or not, then we were using our palp of the finger. But during palpating the thrill, we will use the wave of the fingers, and the fingers will be of the chest, and thenar hypothenar eminence will be of the chest wall, like this. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
The same areas I am palpating for the thrill. Apical area or mitral area. This is the tricuspid area. This is pulmonary area, and this is aortic area. This is the palpation of the thrill. Okay. Now another one in palpation is the left parasternal heave is present or not. Left parasternal heave means when there is right ventricular hypertrophy, there will be a upward movement or a heaving impulse in the left parasternal border. How we will see that? We will place the ulnar border of the hand in the left parasternal area, and if there is upside down of the hand, then we can say that there is a parasternal heave present in that area. Normally, it does not. The hand does not look up and down, but if there is parasternal heave right in right ventricular hypertrophy, then there will be uplifting and downgrading of the of my hand, like this. Okay. Now these are the inspection and palpation. Now during auscultation, remember two things. Number one, the auscultation of the mitral area of the tricuspid area, and auscultation of the base of the heart means pulmonary area and aortic area. When you auscultate the mitral area and tricuspid area, patient will lie supine like that. But when you auscultate the base of the heart, that means the aortic area and pulmonary area, patient will sit and will be leaning forward. Just I am showing. Now we have localized the apex. Now we will place our stethoscope over the apex. There will be sound like lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. The lub is the fastest sound and dub is the second hard sound. You all know that. Next, we will go to the tricuspid area. Now, when we auscultate the base of the heart, means pulmonary and aortic area, patient will sit and will be leaning forward. Okay, and then we palpate the pulmonary area and aortic area. During this auscultation, what we will note? First, we will note the heart sound, whether the heart sounds are normal or not. S1 and S2 present or not, normal or not, or whether S1 is loud, S2 is loud or not. If there is any S3 or S4. S3 comes just after S2 and S4 it comes just before S1. Means both are diastolic sounds. The timing between S1 and S2 is systole and timing between the S2 and S1 is diastole. If there is third heart sound, then it will be like lub dub dub, lub dub dub, lub dub dub. This is the third heart sound. And when there is lub lub dub, lub lub dub, lub lub dub, this is the fourth heart sound. So the third heart sound comes after S2 and fourth heart sound comes before S1. Both are diastolic sound. What are the other things that we auscultate besides the heart sound? Any murmur or added sound are present or not? When we auscultate the apex and we auscultate a murmur, there is a murmur. Now you have to distinguish whether it is systolic murmur or it is diastolic murmur. How will we do that? Now we are listening to a murmur, we are getting a murmur. Now give your left thumb to the carotid. If the murmur coincides with the carotid pulsation, that means that the murmur is systolic. If the murmur does not coincide with the carotid pulsation, that means the murmur is diastolic. Okay. And what are the other sounds that we auscultate? Like if there is opening snap in mitral stenosis, that comes before the murmur due to bellowing down of the mitral valve. And the other things we auscultate by our stethoscope is if there is any click or not. Okay, these are the things we have to note down during auscultation. The heart sounds S1, S2, S3 or S4. If there is any murmur or not. If there is murmur, it is systolic or diastolic. If diastolic murmur, it is early diastolic or mid diastolic or late diastolic. If systolic, then if it is pansystolic or ejection systolic. In diastolic murmurs, if it is mid diastolic murmur, then we can suspect in the most prominent in the mitral area, then the diagnosis is the mitral stenosis. If in the mitral area we can get a pansystolic murmur, then the diagnosis is mitral regurgitation. And murmur of the mitral regurgitation often radiates to the axillary area and infrascapular area. So when you get a pansystolic murmur over the mitral area, also auscultate the axilla and left infrascapular area if there is any radiation.
Sir, we can't see on the other side.
Infrascapular area. Left infrascapular area. And this is the axillary area. These two sides you have to auscultate if there is any pansystolic murmur in the mitral area. Okay, the pansystolic murmur means there are two types of systolic murmurs mainly. One is pansystolic, means the murmur starts with S1 and ends through S2. So S1 and S2 both are soft and can't be heard properly. You can only hear the murmur throughout the systole. This is called pansystolic murmur. And another is ejection systolic murmur. Pansystolic murmur is we find in mitral regurgitation, and if we find it on the tricuspid area, the diagnosis may be tricuspid regurgitation or ventricular septal defect. And other systolic murmurs are the ejection systolic murmur. Ejection systolic murmur means we can hear the S1 and S2 properly. The murmur starts after S1 and ends before S2. So we can hear S1 and S2 properly. In between this time phase, there is the audible murmur that is called ejection systolic murmur. That is the classical sign of aortic stenosis. We can hear the ejection systolic murmur in the aortic area in aortic stenosis. Okay, and in diastolic murmur means when we auscultate a murmur that does not coincide with the carotid pulsation, that is diastolic murmur. It may be early diastolic murmur, we find it in aortic regurgitation, and it may be mid systolic murmur that we find in classically in mitral stenosis and also hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. Okay, so the proper positioning of the patient during auscultation is a must. When you auscultate the apical area and tricuspid area, let the patient be supine position, and when you auscultate the base of the heart, that is the aortic area and pulmonary area, make the patient in supine position and slightly leaning forward. Okay, now in your exam there are 4 types of valvular heart disease that we are expecting from the undergraduate examinee. One is mitral stenosis, one is mitral regurgitation, another is aortic stenosis, and other is aortic regurgitation. Now, why the murmur of the grading of the murmur, and why the murmur of these are in different time of the cardiac cycle? Now, this is the discussion, a theoretical discussion. I will now leave the subject that is all about the cardiological precordial examination and pulse, JBP, and blood pressure that you have been taught by Dr. Kuntal, and I was told to demonstrate the precordial examination. That is all about precordial examination. Now the discussion will be theoretical. Why the murmur of the different types of valvular heart disease in the different times of cardiac cycle and the gradings of the murmur like that. আমি সাবজেক্টকে ছেড়ে দিচ্ছি, এবার তোমাদের কিছু প্রশ্ন থাকলে বলতে পারো। মানে এক্সামিনেশনের ব্যাপারে if there is any query about examination of the cardiovascular system or precordium, you can ask me. I shall demonstrate you. হ্যাঁ বলো, আরেকবার বলো।
স্যার জেভিপি এক্সামিনেশনটা একবার দেখিয়ে দেবেন কিভাবে করব?
জেভিপি এক্সামিনেশন আছে। The patient will be in 45-degree position. Okay. Now the JVP examination, what will you see? Internal jugular vein or external jugular vein? Anyone? Internal, yes.
Internal.
The internal jugular vein comes behind the mastoid and it enters the thorax through the two heads of the sternocleidomastoid. Okay, and external jugular vein you can find more peripherally, but we don't judge the external jugular vein because it traverses through the deep fascia of the neck and there may be kinking and obstruction of the external jugular vein at any moment. So if we want to judge the pressure of the right atrium, it is the internal jugular venous pressure. Normally it is less than 5 centimeter of the H2O. So the right atrium is below 5 centimeter of the sternal angle. So normally we can't see internal jugular vein pulsation, but when there is rise of right atrium due to any cause, it may be tricuspid regurgitation, it may be pulmonary arterial hypertension, it may be congestive cardiac failure, like that you will see the internal jugular pulsation above the clavicle. ठीक है? Now the patient will lie supine in 45-degree position. We will see the from root of the neck, the two heads of the sternomastoid, the internal jugular vein traverse like that. Okay. Now what we do, we make the patient's head to the other side, and now use a torch if there is not enough light. The torch is focused from the right side of the patient, like obliquely. Now you can see the pulsation of the internal jugular vein if there is raised pressure of the right atrium. And how will you measure? Now it may be the pulsation may be carotid pulsation or it may be internal jugular venous pulsation. How will you differentiate between these two? Just feel the pulsation. If the pulsation can be felt, it is carotid pulsation, but venous pulsation you can't feel. So when you place your finger, palm of the finger, usually the thumb of the finger, over the pulsation, if it is palpable, then it is carotid pulsation. If it is not palpable, then it is internal jugular venous pulsation. Another thing to differentiate between these two is the carotid pulsation has a single peak, but internal jugular venous pulsation has double peak. There is two positive wave, three positive waves and two negative waves of the internal jugular vein. What are the waves? The waves are A, C, X, B, Y chronologically. The A and C wave is positive wave that is not usually seen. So we can see just A wave and B wave as a positive wave. There will be two peaks of the pulsation. If there is two peaks of the pulsation, it is venous pulsation or jugular venous pulsation. Okay, but carotid pulsation has a single peak. And number 3 differentiating point, if we press over the root of the neck from where the pulsation begins, there will be obliteration of the jugular venous pulsation, but carotid pulsation will remain same. Number 3. And number 4 and very important is abdominojugular reflex. What is abdominojugular reflex? If we press over the abdomen or right hypochondrium, anywhere, when you increase the intra-abdominal pressure, it will increase the interthoracic pressure, it will increase the venous return to the heart. So right atrial pressure will increase and there the pulsation, the visible pulsation over the neck will increase. That is called abdominojugular reflex. How many seconds will you palpate? 10 seconds. You will press your hand over the abdomen for 10 seconds, either in the right hypochondrium or in the mid-umbilical region. Thus, we can increase the venous return to the heart and the jugular venous pulsation will increase, but carotid venous pulsation will not increase. So the patient will lie in 45-degree angle, head will be on that side. You will give a torch from in tangentially from this direction, and you will see the pulsation with double peak over the neck. And how will we measure the how many centimeter of H2O the jugular venous pulsation is? First, check the upper limit of the venous pulsation. From there, you tangentially make a line with a postcard, or suppose this is a postcard, and you get a pulsation of the upper limit of jugular vein here. So horizontally you will place a postcard like this horizontally. Okay, now you measure from this postcard from here to the chest wall, angle of Lewis. Measure this. Suppose this is 5 centimeter. Now the right atrium is 5 centimeter below the angle of the Lewis. So if so you add 5 with this 5. 5 plus 5 is equal to 10 centimeter of H2O. H2O is the jugular venous pressure. The normal jugular venous pressure is less than 5 centimeter of H2O, but when it is raised, you see the upper limit of the jugular vein, then you hold a postcard horizontally. From this, you draw a line from the postcard to the angle of Lewis and add 5 to that to measure the how many centimeter of H2O of JBP is this. Understood?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now I am coming. Don't leave the meeting. Okay. Now, when you am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Abhinandan, I am
Yes, sir.
audible.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes.
when you give a diagnosis to a valvular heart disease, then what are the parameters we see or we tell? This is a case of mitral stenosis of rheumatic origin, and the patient is in sinus rhythm or in atrial fibrillation. Anyone can be. If there is any features of heart failure or not, if there is any evidence of infective endocarditis or not, and if there is any murmur with grading. Okay, and also the NYHA classification, means Newark Heart Association classification. Do you know what is Newark Heart Association classification of cardiovascular disease? The Newark Heart Association classification has 4 components. NYHA has 4 components. Number 1 is dyspnea or respiratory distress. Number 2 is palpitation. Number 3 is chest pain, and number 4 is fatigue. Number 1 is respiratory distress or dyspnea. Number 2 is palpitation. Number 3 is chest pain, and number 4 is fatigue. These components, if present in a known cardiovascular diseased case, remember this, NYHA classification is not for any other respiratory distress like COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There is also respiratory distress, but we don't use NYHA term in COPD patients. আজকে আমি ক্লাস নিচ্ছি, হ্যাঁ একটু পরে করছি। So the patient must be a known case of cardiovascular disease, and these symptoms are if present in rest. In rest without any activity, the patient is having dyspnea, patient is having palpitation, patient is having chest pain, patient is having fatigue. If these symptoms are present at rest, then the patient is NYHA class 4. If these symptoms are not present at rest, but these symptoms are present in patients who are doing less than normal physical activity, like the patient is in supine position, he has no symptom, but when he goes to bathroom, it is a normal physical activity. But when the patient feels palpitation or fatigue or dyspnea when going to a bathroom, which is a normal physical activity, then it is class 3. Okay, understood? Class 2 is the patient is having symptoms with normal physical activity. Going to bathroom is a less than normal physical activity we can take, but বাজার যাওয়া বা অন্য কিছু সিঁড়ি দিয়ে সামান্য ওঠা এগুলো হচ্ছে normal physical activity. When the patient feels symptoms in normal physical activity, then it is class 2. And when the patient is having symptom in more than normal physical activity, like he is running, he is jogging, or walking in a hurry, this is a more than normal physical activity. When the patient is having these symptoms in more than normal physical activity, it is class 1. So class 1 is more than normal physical activity. Class 2 is symptom in normal physical activity. Class 3 is symptoms in more less than normal physical activity, and number 4, the symptoms are in rest. This is NYHA classification. So in a valvular heart disease case, maybe NYHA class 1, 2, 3 or 4. If the patient is NYHA class 4, that means the patient have severe degree of heart failure. Okay. Another classification is there. Another 2 classification is there. Number 1 is Canadian Scandinavian score CSS, which is used in angina patient. Like I have told the 4 components of the NYHA classification: fatigue, palpitation, chest pain, and dyspnea. You take chest pain amongst them, those 4 entities, and when chest pain is present at rest, this is CSS class 4. When the chest pain is in less than normal physical activity, it is CSS class 3. When the chest pain is present in normal physical activity, it is class 2. And when it is more than normal physical activity, then it is class 1. And another classification is the grade of the murmur. These are classification, and murmur is graded from 1 to 6 graded. like muscle power you have already have been learned in neurology class. Like this, murmur has also grading. When the murmur is heard by an expert in optimum condition, you and me cannot recognize a murmur, but a cardiologist of 10 years or 6 years, 10 years or 15 years experience can detect a murmur in optimum condition. Optimum condition means there is no shouting around the ear, around the patient. The patient is lying in optimum condition and you are listening with the right bell of the stethoscope. This is the optimum condition. When it is only heard by an expert in optimum condition, it is grade 1. Grade 2 is the heard by a not very loud murmur, but can be heard by a non-expert like you and me. A non-expert, when heard a murmur, we hear a murmur, it is grade 2. Grade 3 is loud murmur. Anyone can hear the murmur, but without any thrill. There is murmur, auscultatory finding is there, but thrill is not palpable. It is grade 3. Grade 4 is very loud murmur and with a thrill. It is grade 4. Grade 5 is the murmur is heard with the stethoscope partly of the chest wall. Means this is my stethoscope and this is the diaphragm, and my stethoscope is partly of the chest. This is grade 5 murmur and obviously with thrill. Grade 4, 5, 6 with thrill. And the grade 6 murmur, the murmur can be heard with the stethoscope of the chest wall, not partly of the chest wall, fully of the chest wall. In close proximity of the chest wall, from the diaphragm, you can see the murmur in your ear. It is grade 6. So grade 1 is
repeat করবেন
আবার repeat করছি. Grade 1, grade 5 টা. Grade 5 when you hear a murmur with the stethoscope partly of the chest wall, not fully, partly of the chest wall. Some rim of the diaphragm is with my chest and some rim of the diaphragm is off the chest wall. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Now you can see that my stethoscope is partly of the chest. This is normal auscultatory finding and this is my stethoscope is partly of the chest. It is grade 5. And when I am pulling off my stethoscope from the chest wall, but it is in close proximity of the chest wall, but you can still hear the murmur, it is grade 6. So grade 1 is the murmur which is audible by an expert in optimum condition. Grade 2 is the murmur that can be heard by a non-expert. Grade 3 is a loud murmur but without a thrill. Grade 4 is very loud murmur with a thrill. Grade 5 is the murmur which is audible with the stethoscope partly of the chest wall. And grade 6, the murmur which is audible fully with the stethoscope fully of the chest wall. This is the 6 gradings of the murmur, grading the classification of the NYHA and classification of the angina pectoris patient. Now I will come to the murmur of the very specific murmurs of the different valvular heart disease. First come to mitral stenosis. Mitral stenosis means the mitral valve cannot close properly. Right? Stenotic lesion. What are the stenotic lesion? Cannot open properly. The stenotic lesions are the valve cuffs cannot open properly and regurgitation regurgitation relations are the valve cast cannot close properly. So in mitral stenosis, the mitral valve cannot open fully. So when the mitral valve cast needed to be opened during the diastole, ventricular diastole, when blood comes from the left atrium to left ventricle, then there is need to open the mitral valve. When the valve cannot open properly, so the valve opening is very narrow, and the same amount of blood, like a normal amount of blood, comes from left atrium to left ventricle. So what will happen? Through a narrowed opening, the same amount of blood is coming, there will be a turbulence that is created around the mitral valve. So the murmur is diastolic, and it is why mid-diastolic. The murmur of the mitral stenosis is mid-diastolic murmur, because have you read the cardiac cycle recently or have forgotten? In first year physiology, you have read the diastolic phases of the cardiac cycle. The first is isovolumetric relaxation phase, where when the mitral valve does not open and systole is over, but the ventricle is relaxing to reduce its pressure. This is called isovolumetric relaxation period. During this period, the mitral valve cast do not open. So this is the first phase of the diastole. During this phase, no blood comes from the left ventricle, left atrium to left ventricle. So there is no question of creating any murmur. So the first phase of the diastole is free from murmur in mitral stenosis. The early diastolic phase is free from the murmur. But when after the early diastolic phase, there is early rapid filling phase, when the left ventricular relaxation, the left ventricle has a pressure lower than the left atrium. In the pressure gradient, the mitral valve opens and the blood flows from the left atrium to left ventricle. From that period, the murmur we can listen. So murmur starts from the mid diastole. Got it? When you get a case of mitral stenosis, this is a must question, why the murmur is mid diastolic. You will say that, sir, because the murmur is mid diastolic, because in early diastole there is ventricular relaxation period. In that period, the valve cast does not open, and no blood comes from the left atrium to left ventricle. So there is no question of producing any murmur. In early rapid filling phase, when the valve cast open, then blood comes from the left atrium to left ventricle. So the murmur is created in that time. So the murmur is mid diastolic. Another feature of the mitral stenosis murmur is the early late diastolic or pre-systolic accentuation. The murmur starts from the mid diastole and it accentuates before systole starts. Why this is? Because in last rapid filling phase there is active atrial contraction. The blood comes from the left atrium to left ventricle not by the pressure gradient, but due to active atrial contraction. Due to active atrial contraction, the intensity of the murmur rises in the last rapid filling phase. So there is mid-diastolic murmur with pre-systolic accentuation. This is the classical finding of the mitral stenosis. Okay. Now coming to the murmur of the mitral regurgitation. It is the pansystolic murmur. Means it starts with S1 and ends through S2. Throughout the systole, the intensity of the murmur remains same. So it is also called hollow systolic murmur. Pansystolic means the whole duration of the systole it covers, and hollow systolic means the intensity of the murmur remains same throughout the systole. Okay, mitral regurgitation means the valve cuffs cannot close properly. The mitral valve cuffs cannot close properly. After closing of the mitral valve, there is production of the S1, and after that the aortic valve opens, and from the left ventricle blood is ejected from left ventricle to aorta. This is the normal chronology. At first the mitral valve closes, then there is active ventricular contraction or systole. In that period the aortic valve opens. So aortic valve opens after closure of the mitral valve. So the mitral valve cannot close properly, so S1 will be stopped. And as the mitral valve cannot close properly, some amount of blood can be regurgitated from the left ventricle to left atrium. This is called mitral regurgitation. The flow is backwards from the left ventricle to left atrium due to proper non-closure of the mitral valve. So S1 will be stopped due to non-closure of the mitral valve, and there will be ejection of the blood from the left ventricle to left atrium. This is called mitral regurgitation. And during the whole systolic period, the blood goes through two openings. One is aortic opening and another is mitral opening. And this through mitral opening, we can hear the murmur. So throughout the systole, there is some amount of blood that is regurgitated from the left ventricle to left atrium. So the murmur is pansystolic. Okay. Now the aortic regurgitation murmur. Aortic regurgitation means the aortic valve cusp cannot close properly. What is the normal phenomenon? After closing of the aortic valve, the ventricle will again try to relax. Isovolumetry relaxation period will start, and after over of the isovolumetry relaxation period, there will be opening of the mitral valve and blood will come from the left ventricle to left atrium to left ventricle. This is the normal phenomenon. But when there is proper non-closure of the aortic valve, what will happen? Some amount of the valve will be regurgitated from the aorta to left ventricle in very early period of the diastole during the early relaxation period of the ventricle, left ventricle. So the murmur of the aortic regurgitation will be early diastolic murmur. Got it? It is early diastolic murmur because the valve cusps of the aortic valve cusp cannot close properly. So there will be some amount of leakage of the blood from the left ventricle, from the aorta to left ventricle. So it is early diastolic murmur. More the duration of the early diastolic murmur, more severe is the aortic regurgitation. And in aortic stenosis, the valve cuffs cannot close properly. The valve cuffs cannot open properly. In aortic regurgitation, it cannot close properly, and in aortic stenosis, it cannot open properly. And when it is needed to open the aortic valve cusp, when left ventricle ejects blood in systole to aorta, so the murmur of the aortic stenosis is purely systolic, and there is no problem in closing of the mitral valve. So mitral valve closes first, then aortic valve opens, and the blood is ejected from the left ventricle to aorta in systole. So there is no problem in closing the mitral valve. So you can hear the S1 properly. After S1, when there is ejection of the mitral valve through a small opening, the aortic valve cusp cannot open properly, so the opening is small. So through this small opening, the blood is ejected from the left ventricle to aorta. So there is again creation of a turbulence around the aortic valve. This produces the murmur of the aortic stenosis. So S1 we can hear properly. After S1, the murmur starts. And there is no problem after systole is over. There is no problem in closing of the mitral valve. There was problem is opening of the mitral valve, aortic valve. So that is called aortic stenosis. The valve cusp cannot open properly. It is stenosis, and when it cannot close properly, it is regurgitation. But in aortic stenosis, it closes properly. So aortic valve can close properly in aortic stenosis. That produces the second heart sound. As soon as the aortic valve cusp and pulmonary valve cusps are closed properly, then the second heart sound is produced, and there is no problem in closing of the valves. So the murmur ends before S2. As soon as the valve cusps are closed, you can hear that, and also the murmur stops before that. So the murmur starts after S1 and ends before S2. So this is classically an ejection systolic murmur. So to summarize, the murmur of the mitral stenosis is mid-diastolic murmur with pre-systolic accentuation. The murmur of the mitral regurgitation is pansystolic as well as holosystolic. The murmur of the aortic stenosis is an ejection systolic murmur that starts after S1 and ends before S2. And the murmur of the aortic regurgitation is early diastolic murmur. Okay. And in any valvular heart disease, you have to describe this also as the patient is in sinus rhythm or not. Means the pulse is regular or irregularly irregular. The atrial fibrillation, in atrial fibrillation we get irregularly irregular pulse. So we can see if we get an irregularly irregular pulse, then we can tell that the patient is not in sinus rhythm, rather he or she is in atrial fibrillation. Also tell the NYHA classification. Okay, in which gate the patient is at present. Now I can invite your question.
স্যার একটা ডাউট হচ্ছে যে এমআর এর ক্ষেত্রে ভলিউমের কন্ট্রাকশনের ইন্টেন্সিটি তো চেঞ্জ হবে, কারণ আইসো ভলিউমেট্রিক কন্ট্রাকশন দেন প্রপার কন্ট্রাকশন তারপরে রিল্যাক্সেশন ফেজে মুভ করবে। তো এই কন্ট্রাকশনের ইন্টেন্সিটি যে ডিফারেন্স থাকছে এতে হলোসিস্টোলিকটা কি করে আসছে এটাই বুঝতে পারছি
না। When there is systole, there is the amount of the blood that is present in the left ventricle. There is stretching of the ventricle, and as much as stretching, more force is there. Okay. Now the systolic pressure gradient between the timing of the systole, the pressure of the left ventricle that creates, there is minor changes of the pressure gradient. There is very minor changes in regurgitation murmur too, as there is you have all told rightly that there is should be changes of the murmur, but we cannot appreciate that because the changing pressure of the left ventricle is very negligible during the whole systolic period.
থ্যাংক ইউ।
স্যার বলছি যে এইচওসিএম এ কি আমরা ইজেকশন সিস্টোলিক মারমার পাবো?
এইচওসিএম এ আমরা সাধারণত ইজেকশন সিস্টোলিক মারমারই পাবো, বিকজ it is left ventricular outflow tract obstruction. Left ventricular outflow tract obstruction like aortic stenosis. ঠিক আছে? So it's a dynamic obstruction. There is septal hypertrophy and the septum comes very close proximity to the aortic valve. So we will get the ejection systolic murmur in HOCM 2.
স্যার বলছি যে এইচওসিএম আর এএস এ তাহলে ইজেকশন সিস্টোলিক মারমারটা আমরা ক্লিনিক্যালি কি ডিফারেন্সিয়েট করতে পারবো, নাকি আমাকে ইমেজিং দিয়েই ডিফারেন্সিয়েট করতে হবে?
না, বিশেষ কিছু পজিশন আছে ইউ ক্যান differentiate between the aortic stenosis murmur and HOCM. Like patient in standing position, now suddenly you tell the patient to squat. Okay, you are hearing the murmur. You are hearing the murmur. In standing position or sitting position. Now you tell the patient to squat suddenly. During squatting, what happens? There is increase in total peripheral resistance. When there is increase in total peripheral resistance, the intensity of the murmur of the HOCM decreases. Okay, another thing is the murmur of the HOCM is most pronounced in left fourth intercostal space, and the murmur of the aortic stenosis is most pronounced in right second intercostal space. These are the differentiating points between the aortic stenosis murmur and HOCM murmur.
ওকে স্যার।
হ্যালো স্যার,
বলো।
স্যার হিভ আর লিফটের মধ্যে ডিফারেন্সটা কি?
হিভ or
লিফট, হিভ এন্ড লিফট।
বুঝতে পারলাম না। হিভ এন্ড
লিফট বা প্যারাস্টার্নাল হিভ এন্ড লিফট, যেটা যে দুটো টার্ম আছে।
Parasternal heave and lift. Parasternal heave and lift, there is no major changes between the parasternal heave and parasternal lift. Parasternal heave is you can when you place your ulnar border of the hand in the parasternal border, your ulnar border of the hand is not detached from the precordium. It is heave, but when it can detach your hand from the precordium, it is called parasternal lift. When there is very severe degree of right ventricular hypertrophy, as in very severe pulmonary arterial hypertension, you can palpate parasternal lift as if the ulnar border of the hand is being detached from the surface.
Okay sir, thank you.
Is there any other question? Kuntal sir will take other classes also. He will also discuss about the valvular heart disease, its severity, how you can judge the severity of the murmur, like that. He has told me to demonstrate the precordial examination that I have done today, and if there is any issue, the Kuntal sir will take another class also. You can tell Kuntal sir. Okay.
Hello, sir. Hello,
Yes.
sir. Can you know how to differentiate between parasternal heave and parasternal pulsation?
Parasternal?
Heave and parasternal pulsation.
Parasternal pulsation, you just feel. It cannot. It is no. The parasternal pulsation is not so forcible that it can uplift and downlift your ulnar border of the hand. You can just feel the pulsation. But in parasternal heave, there will be uplifting and downlifting of the hand. That is parasternal heave. And but in parasternal pulsation, you cannot. The force is that not much that it can uplift or downlift your hand. You can just feel the pulsation.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
স্যার পেশেন্ট অ্যাপ্রোচটা কিরকম হবে একটু শর্টে বলে দেবেন? মানে ধরুন কেউ হার্ট ফেলিয়ারের কেস নিয়ে প্রেজেন্ট করলো, তার এই ভেন্ট্রিকুলার সেপ্টাল ডিফেক্ট বা
patient present usually presents with respiratory distress. This patient valvular heart disease patient কখনো তোমার ওয়ার্ডে ভর্তি হবে না রেসপিরেটরি ডিস্ট্রেস ছাড়া। কেউ শুধু প্যালপিটেশন নিয়ে বা শুধু ফ্যাটিক নিয়ে বা শুধু চেস্ট পেন নিয়ে ভর্তি হবে না, বেশিরভাগই ভর্তি হবে রেসপিরেটরি ডিস্ট্রেস নিয়ে। এবং হঠাৎ করে রেসপিরেটরি ডিস্ট্রেস, হার্ট ফেলিওরের রেসপিরেটরি ডিস্ট্রেস হঠাৎ করে বেড়ে যায়। সো there will be a past history also, but the respiratory distress suddenly increases. That is the first sign of the heart failure. And if there is 3 features of left ventricular failure and 3 features of congestive cardiac failure. The features of left ventricular failure are: number 1, there will be gallop rhythm, means there will be S3 or S4 with tachycardia. If there is no tachycardia and S3 and S4 is heard, this is not called gallop rhythm. When there is pulse rate greater than 100 and you can hear S3 and S4, a gallop rhythm, you can tell. The first is gallop rhythm. Okay. The second is basal crepitations. When you auscultate the back in the infrascapular area, you can auscultate fine crepitations, which are high pitched. High pitched fine crepitations are heard. And number 3 is pulsus alternans. When you feel the pulse, there will be alternate beat of normal volume and reduced volume. So gallop rhythm, basal crepitations and pulsus alternans. These are 3 features of left ventricular failure. And what are the features of congestive cardiac failure? Means there is congestion in the vascular system. When there is right heart failure, there will be elevated and pulsatile jugular venous pressure, there will be pedal edema, and there will be soft, tender, pulsatile hepatomegaly. These are the features of congestive cardiac failure. So left ventricular failure, gallop rhythm, 3 features: gallop rhythm, basal crepitations and pulsus alternans. Congestive cardiac failure, 3 features: raised and pulsatile JVP, soft, tender and pulsatile liver, and pedal edema. Patients usually presents in congestive cardiac failure presents with anasarca, with history of respiratory distress. There will be elevated JVP, hepatomegaly which will be tender, and there will be pedal edema also. This is the features of congestive cardiac failure. And when you are getting a case of left ventricular failure and the sine cone of the murmur like that, then you can see that it is a case of mitral stenosis or mitral regurgitation in left ventricular failure or any NYHA classification.
Thank you, sir.
Shall I leave the meeting now? If there is no query, I can leave the meeting.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Abhinandan? Abhinandan?
Yes, sir.
I'm leaving the meeting.
Okay, sir.